All right, hi guys. This is your mini lecture for chapters 5 and 8 in week 3. So again, I'm just going to go through and talk about some of the highlights of chapter 5 and chapter 8. Remember that I'm going to give you things that I want you to write about for an assignment as we go through the video. So make sure you're watching the whole video. So yeah, that's what we're talking about. So chapter 5 and chapter 8. Chapter 5 is looking at love and intimacy, and then chapter 8 is looking at dating. Now, chapter 5, again, I think this chapter could be better. But I think it's okay for a general chapter. Chapter 5 is going to look at love and intimacy. Now, remember, intimacy is not just physical intimacy. It's not just a sexual thing. Intimacy is also a relationship that you have with someone else. I have some friends of mine, and we are very intimate because we know everything that there is to know about each other. We've been friends for a long time. And there's nothing, that's not a sexual relationship. Intimacy is that it's that trust, it's that best friend, it's that person that you can count on, whether it is someone that you're dating, someone that you're married to, a friend, a sibling, whatever it is. So kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at this chapter. One of the things that chapter 5 does is it looks a little bit at kind of how we share information with each other. And, one of the things as you get going in the chapter, figure 1 talks about the zone of vulnerability. What that is talking about, really, I think they made it much harder than it needs to be. The zone of vulnerability, it talks about the birthplace of intimacy, really is this idea that when you are starting a relationship with someone, again, whether it's a dating relationship, it's a friendship relationship, whatever it is, you guys start with the basics. Oh, where are you from? Oh, how long have you been married? Or, I'm just trying to think about different conversations with different people. Where did you go to high school? When's your birthday? Your basic things. Those things are not, they're not risky. It's not a risky thing to say, oh, I went to high school at, Guilford High School, or whatever. But as you get to know a person, you get to that point where, okay, I'm going to talk about, we've done the basics, we know how many siblings, we know our favorite color, all of that. And then something will come up where one person in that relationship is going to throw out there something really personal. And that's where it becomes a risk. Maybe you say, something and it's appropriate for you to follow up with, well, yeah, I've been in counseling. My counselor is great, or my therapist is great. That's a risk. And what you are hoping in that relationship is that someone then takes a risk back and they share something a little more personal. Now it doesn't have to be as big as counseling. It can be really anything. It can be maybe you talk about, what has hurt you in the past in a relationship. Maybe you talk about, some of your flaws, maybe, maybe, I don't know, who knows, whatever. But whatever it is that you feel like it could be a risk to, sorry, I should have muted my other computer. That's my email. Sorry. It's actually one of you guys emailing me. Anyway, we look at, how those relationships are, give a little bit and then give a little bit back and then give a little bit back. And as your relationships become more intimate, your relationship, you guys share more and more personal stuff, and you get to the point where, you feel safe with somebody enough to share something. I know one of the issues for my daughter has been, it's really hard for her to talk to people about, sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I shouldn't do that. It's hard for her to tell people about her dad. Her dad died when she was 8. Her dad had lots and lots of problems, and she doesn't like to share how he died. She doesn't really even like to share that he died. And for a long time we had to talk about that, about, how that's a whole other issue, but how that was his issue, not her. He died of a drug overdose. The reason number 972 why we were not together. But in any event, one of the things that bothers her is, she has told people about her dad. And then because, children are vicious little people between junior high and high school, all of a sudden she's not friends with somebody anymore. And she feels exposed because that person now knows something very personal about her that really she doesn't tell a lot of people. So when she does share that, she's feeling that safety, that trust with that person. And then, of course, when somebody violates that, then how that affects your own trust of other people. So that's kind of what this is talking about is, how do you feel safe with someone enough to, kind of share back and forth and do that. You gave a little and said something personal, so I'll give a little and say something personal, and it builds that intimacy and it builds that connection. So that's what it's kind of talking about with that zone of vulnerability. When you scroll down in chapter 5, then it starts talking about the different kinds of love. And this is something that's consistent across textbooks. It talks about Eros and Storge and Pragma and Agape and Ludus and all of that. And it's the type of love that's out there. And it kind of goes along a little bit with Maslow's idea of hierarchy of needs and how, people need each other. People need people. And you can read about the different types of love. And, maybe in the back of your mind, think about relationships that you have that might be an example of one of those. That's always a good way to remember the different types. So it talks a little bit about that, and it gets into a little bit as well about, other scientific approaches about love. And it talks about Plato's definition of love and unconditional love and romantic love and committed love and altruism and all that, and it also gets into different kinds of love about just friendship, especially with older adults, how it may not be that physical love that you might have felt when you were 20, but it's this mutual respect, friendship, kind of companionship love that's out there. So there's all kinds of things. I'm sure you guys can find somebody that that is an example of obsessive love. I think one of the things, one of the dangers about having a love chapter is also, what people's ideas are of love. And many times, people's ideas of love, if you do not see a healthy relationship around you, many times people's idea of love comes from the movies and TV, which is, not always accurate and certainly doesn't encompass all relationships. And, it's interesting to watch people when when they're in a relationship and how it kind of models what they've seen. But then also, I'm sure, again, you guys can come up with people who maybe want to be in love in a movie. They want that happy ending, they want that Sleepless in Seattle or that, kind of magical Hollywood love. And that's, that tends to give people a false sense of what relationships are about. We'll talk about this more when we talk about marriage and divorce, but, marriages go through this thing where, it's this high when you first get married and everything is new and all of that. But then there's this slump that comes right around 5 to 7 years. Maybe not necessarily related to the birth of the child, but, people think that they should stay on that newlywed high forever. And that's just a temporary thing. Relationships are work, and to get them to work, there's a lot of things that need to happen. And we'll talk about that more with marriage. But so this chapter really kind of basically just introduces the ideas of relationship. I like the figure 2 where it talks about adolescent intimacy, the sex love matrix, and kind of how males and females, boys and girls see love, a little bit differently. But one of the other ones that I want to look at is, as well as figure 3, the comparison of the characteristics of short-term and long-term relationships. What I want you to do for chapter 5 assignment is to look at figure 3 and kind of read about, you know, short-term and long-term relationships. And it talks about their, you know, the duration of the relationship, a shorter relationship versus a longer relationship, and how shorter relationships tend to be less secure. They tend to have high insecurity, but also high vulnerability. You know, you might throw something out there and somebody goes, nope, you know, nope, I don't like that issue. I don't like that person had that problem, you know, whatever, and that relationship stops. Versus a long-term relationship that tend to be high intimacy and high trust. So you can read about that in this section, but what I want you to do for the first assignment for this chapter is to talk to me about short-term and long-term relationships. Actually, you're doing that. My apologies. You're already doing that in an assignment. I'm sorry. That is actually an assignment in here. So my apologies. I forgot that I did that. So let's back up. Let's back up and look at, hang on one second here. I knew I liked that. I knew I liked that part of the chapter. So you have, let's see here. So you guys are doing for week 3. So you have a, yeah. So week 3, you're going to have an assignment on relationships, which is going to be that looking at short-term and long-term relationships. So disregard that for this assignment. So let's go back up for this assignment, for your mini lecture assignment. Let's go back up, and I want you to try to find examples, whether it is yourself, it's people that you know, you know, for lack of a better example, if you don't have an example of someone that you know, or you use TV or whatever. But what I want you to do, go back up and look at the types of love, the eros, storge, pragma, agape, ludus. You can stop there. Try to find or give an example of each one of those. Tell me who the example is and why. If it was you, tell me, you know, what the relationship was about and why. If it's family, if it's your parents, it's people that you know, say, you know, it's the neighbors next door, and this is why they're an example of this. This is what they do. If it's you, explain the relationship and, you know, explain the relationship and why that was an example of, you know, for example, storge. So storge love is the love of your best friend and in a normal, casual context of life. Storge is calm and peaceful, surprising to some who might simply have hung out together at one point, but suddenly discovered that their friendship deepened and became more important than other friendships. So I might use my daughter with this. And as she is now a junior in high school, you know, how she has friends, but she really has 3 really close friends. They're just there. And, you know, they are best friends. They know everything about each other, but they are good for each other in many different ways. They're all great friends. They all are committed to each other. You know, there's many things that they do, but that has changed over the years from the, you know, we have 15 great friends to she really has these 3 that she can count on. And they are very calm and peaceful, in that the friendships themselves are not necessarily the people, but the friendship themselves. That storge kind of idea is there's no drama with those girls. So that's kind of what I want you to think about for the first part of this assignment is think about an example of eros, storge, pragma, agape, and ludus in your life, in people that you know, in if you really cannot come up with someone in your own life or someone that you know, pull something from a TV show or a movie that you know, but explain it so I get it about, about what that relationship was or is and why it's an example of something. And then let's go on to chapter 8. Chapter 8, you're actually going to do an assignment using filter theory about how you filter through people when you're looking to date or start a relationship. How maybe you talk to this person and maybe you talk to that person, and maybe that back and forth intimacy, it just didn't work. So you kind of filter that person out, but you talk to this other person. So you're going to actually do an assignment on that. So I kind of want to look at with chapter 8, other things about dating, other things about, relationships, and, looking at several theories in here. But you guys, the other assignment that you're going to do is based on figure 2, kind of how you filter through people. But what I want you to do for this chapter is I want you to be honest. When we talk about relationships and who we filter through, one of those things is that physical attraction. And I want you to think about a relationship that you have, that you had, or that is current, and be honest. I'm the only one that's going to read it, and I promise you I am not judgmental about this. But, talk about the physical attraction part of it. What part does that play for you? And be honest, because it plays a big part in how you see people. They may have a great personality. They may be the most caring person in the world, but you just don't find them physically attractive. Or maybe you didn't find them physically attractive, but as you get to know them more, their personality makes them more physically attractive. So I want you to give me at least one example of a relationship of yours, whether it worked or not, whether it's current or not, whatever, about the level of physical attractiveness and the importance to you. What is behind that, and what do you find attractive? You might be someone that likes people's backsides or front sides, or ethnicity, or hair color, or eye color, or, short, tall, whatever. What are some of your physical characteristics that you want to see in someone? Okay. For me, I just really have a hard time with someone shorter than me. I don't know why. I do. It feels weird to me. Other people don't. Some people want someone who is much, much taller than them, or they want someone that's built, or, got lots of muscles, or that's got a skinny waist, or, whatever. It's okay to say those things, because it is part of how we are attracted to people. And while you're talking about that physical attractiveness, then talk about the idea of homogamy, the idea that we tend to date people that are similar to us. And why do you think that is? Hint, hint, go back to that chapter 5 idea of short-term, long-term, or of the give and take, the vulnerability. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to what you're supposed to do for the second assignment here. Go through, tell me for the chapter 8, for the second question for this, what are the things that are physically attractive for you about other people? And then talk about who you would want to date, or who you are dating, or who you're married to, or whatever. And the role of homogamy, the tendency that we date people like us. So what does that play? If this person that you're with right now, or were with, were you physically attracted to them, but then how similar were you guys? And how did you know? You knew because of the vulnerability stuff, in part from chapter 5. So talk about that. Maybe you can come up with an example. I have one. A guy from high school. I will never forget this guy. Guy from high school. He was the guy. I'm sure all of you can come up with, somebody that that was the guy. It was the very long time ago, but it was the star football player, big guy, really cute. Everybody thought he was fabulous. And he went to our church, and so I kind of knew him already. And, he was at some of the youth group things that we did, and, whatever. And we got to talking, and, it was, I was in high school, give me a break there. But, he was the guy. Like, you just wanted to call all your friends, because of course we didn't text back then, and go, oh my God, do you know who I was talking to? So anyway, started talking to him, and we went out on a date one time. It was the worst date ever. Those physical things, it was so funny. The physical things were there, but as we started talking, it's like we are worlds apart, worlds apart. Just in values, I mean, sort of, but like he just saw the world differently than I did. And, we were in high school and, he was a little bit older than me. But I mean, it was just like second nature that at 17 years old, I was 15 at the time, we were sitting in his living room. He got up, got a glass of wine and sat down and drank it and offered me one. I'm like, no, I'm 15. So it was just a different family value. Great guy. I will tell you, he went on to be a pastor and he still is a pastor, but we just didn't connect. It was just not there. That back and forth, kind of risky, getting to know you. Are you going to put that personal stuff out there? I think it was an hour and a half into this date, and I'm like, no, we're done. And he knew it too. We stayed friends. We are still friends. We are still friends on social media. But it just didn't work. So one of the things for that relationship was we were very different. Even though we went to the same high school, we went to the same church, we were involved in the same youth group, everything else was different. Different upbringing, different background, different everything. So I kind of want you to think about that too. What is that role of homogamy? How did that play into the relationship? But then also, maybe they were similar to you, but maybe as you got talking, you realized that you're very different. Okay. So just kind of ramble on about a relationship, for that second assignment. So, in the rest of chapter 8 really is going to talk about a lot of theories of relationships. One of them is stimulus value role theory. And it's kind of interesting because, I don't like this. I don't like their visual on that. Stimulus value role theory, it talks about stimulus's values and roles, but it talks about level of intimacy and what stimulates you versus what doesn't. And it kind of talks about how, you have lots of stimulus for this relationship, but it's physical, and how, the roles and the values become more important as it's a long-term kind of relationship. There's again similarity principles and different things. There's some rules for mate selection that you can look at. And again, are they hardcore rules? It doesn't have to be. Risky and dangerous and unhealthy relationships gets into a little bit about not only different things with relationships, but I would encourage all of you to read about and read figure 6 about, unhealthy relationships and the things that might be going on in a relationship. What are people's responses to that? For example, if you're in a relationship that is critical to you about things that you cannot change, your physical traits, your personality, your quirks, is somebody shaming you? Are they angry or are they violent? If people are physically violent to you, if they fly into a rage when frustrated, the kinds of things that are red flags in a relationship. So I would like for you to review those also. I think in part because I find a lot of times college students have no idea about the issues of domestic violence and relationship issues. So make sure that you review that as well. So otherwise, I think chapter 8 is pretty self-explanatory. You do not need to do the quizzes at the bottom. I like that they have quizzes, but I don't like that they're not always accurate and easy to understand. So anyway, that's chapter 8. Again, make sure that you're reading everything. This stuff is not rocket science. This is not, some 500 level, graduate level chemistry class. But as always, if you don't understand something, please reach out. Make sure that you answer the 2 questions in your week 3 mini lecture that I talked about in here. And then as always, reach out and let me know if you have questions. Otherwise, have a good day. Thanks, guys.